Welcome on Texas football. Special report here talking about the portal. It opens tomorrow officially. There have already been at least one Texas player announced that they're headed to the portal, and that'll be Gerry Bledsoe, defensive lineman out of Marlin initially. But we also expect Texas to go after some players in the portal, and that's kind of what we want to talk about here today. I will say this before we get going into the ones that Texas wants to attract. We do expect some names to go in the portal this week. It opens officially tomorrow, December 9th. So do not be surprised by that. We will be tracking that for you both on ontexasfootball.com as well as here on videos. Make sure you check out both places because tomorrow could be a fairly big news day. What I want to do today, though, Gerry and CJ, is give people a primer, so to speak, a syllabus of what we expect Texas to look at and go after in the portal. And I'm just going to go down position by position with you guys, and we're going to say yes or no. Texas is not going to take any look whatsoever, or they might. And then maybe how many at that position they might look at. So, for example, I'm going to start with quarterback. We don't expect Texas to go at any quarterback. Correct, CJ? No quarterback?
Yeah, no quarterback for me. I feel like you're pretty content with Arch Manning taking over the reins. You believe in Trey Owens. He showed enough during the spring game. He's done very well in terms of developing in the system. Of course, you'll have KJ Lacey coming onto campus as well. Texas should be happy with the three. And, of course, Arch Manning, his reliability with staying healthy, that's going to be the key. But right now, I think you roll the dice there.
All right, Gerry, what about at running back? That is the question because C.J. Baxter is injured. Yes, James Simon will be there. Ricky Stewart will be there as well. Added to Trey Wisner. But, Gerry, does Texas even take a look at a running back in the portal, in your opinion?
I think they'll entertain it because Baxter's, you just don't know where he'll be this at the beginning of the season. Christian Clark, the same. I mean, those are two significant injuries for young running backs. And then you don't know if Jaden Blue's going to come back. I mean, so that's kind of a question. And obviously started the year, Jaden Blue wanted to go pro. Well, he's not on the field much at all right now. So, I mean, will he be back next year? And I'm not saying he's going to transfer, but I think once Texas has the answer to that question, I think that could kind of tell us the answer. But I think Texas will take a look at a back, maybe a role player running back, not a Velton Gardner, but an actual role player running back, which could come in and impact winning for this team. I don't think they're going to go attract some starting running back with 1,200 yards. They have Trey Wisner, James Simon, Ricky Stewart coming in at midterm. They have good players at this position, but it wouldn't shock me if they didn't go after a role player and maybe a bigger back.
So 0 to 1, more likely 0 probably at this point. CJ, you agree with that assessment?
I do. Again, you look at the bodies in the running back room right now, there's not necessarily a physically imposing back. And, C.J. Baxter, probably the closest thing to it. But what's he going to look like coming back to 100% health? Will he get to 100% health by the time that, the season rolls around? Because he's not going to be active for the spring. He'll be limited in the summer. And then you'll have, basically a month and a half to ramp him all the way up for his first outing against Ohio State. Yeah, let's see what that's like for Texas. But look, I think Trey Wisner at least sets a good floor for this running back room. If C.J. Baxter comes back and can provide that bigger body, maybe a guy that can fall forward for, the first and inches or second and third and goal, whatever it might be, that's going to be key. But I think that they'll at least look around for a bigger body back.
They need to, I think. If that were my decision, that's the one thing they've missed. Jarrett Gibson also had the fumbles this year. That's a little concerning even for his future, much less where he's at right now in his development. Wide receiver, though, we said 0-1 at running back. Wide receiver, though, is a total wild card right now. Isaiah Bond definitely gone, we believe. We think Matthew Golden is leaning in that direction as well. Silas Bolden expected to move on. Jonte Cook is already saying he's entering the transfer portal when it officially opens tomorrow. Guys, I'm looking at it. DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo, and then the newcomers, as well as Parker Livingstone, Aaron Butler. How many and what type at wide receiver? Gerry, I'll let you go first.
I think one or two, and one of them will definitely be a speed guy. And look, if there's just a player that's too good to pass up, then I think Texas will look at that player as well, but could also be somebody with some return game juice, whether that be kickoff or punt return game juice. So I think it's going to be a speed player because Jamie French, a really good player in the mold of an A.D. Mitchell. I'm not saying he's going to run 4.35 at the combine. Nobody thought he would, but in the mold of A.D. Mitchell, but he's going to be a freshman. Khalil Lockett, an ex-receiver that can go win 50-50 balls, win down the field, going to be a freshman playing behind Ryan Wingo. Parker Livingston will be in the mix there as well. And Aaron Butler makes this kind of a wild card. If Texas really likes Aaron Butler's future, then maybe they only go after one receiver in the portal. But I think it's going to be at least one with the possibility of two if there's just somebody that's too good to pass up.
What about you, CJ? You think 1 to 2?
I was thinking one. Again, you have a lot of true talent coming in, and it's one thing not to want to rely on true freshmen to be the base of your team, but I think you can get away with it at times at wide receiver. Not saying that that's going to be the sole spot where Texas relies on, freshmen for playing time, but you're going to have Ryan Wingo returning. You're going to have DeAndre Moore returning. Right now, we're just seeing the two of them combined for about 130 yards against Georgia with about 19 targets. So that's a big piece of the offense already. The two of them sets a really solid standard. And then what do you get from Parker Livingston and Butler, as y'all were mentioning? That'll be interesting. But I think that this portal at wide receiver, there's always going to be talent there. It's the most flush of talent you'll see of any position in all of college football. There's going to be game changers. I think Texas needs to add one.
All right. What about tight ends? This is a position that's interesting to me because Gunnar Helm and Juan Davis both gone. They've been 1-2. Maybe you take one if Amari Niblack isn't around, but with him expected to return, as well as Jordan Washington coming in and having the season that he did, Spencer Shannon's played some time in line. Then you have the two newcomers in Nick Townsend, as well as Emery Winston. That would give you 5 tight ends. Now, maybe if one of those guys somehow isn't around, you look at the portal. I tend to think Texas is not going to look in the portal for a tight end. I would almost usually on some of these, like quarterback is definitely a 0. Running back, I can see 0 to 1. Tight end for me is somewhere between those two positions. I think it's more likely they take a shot at a tight end, but only if it's the right fit. Y'all agree with that assessment overall?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's anything I can add to that. I totally agree with it.
CJ, you the same way?
I'm kind of up in the air in tight end. I am. And it's more just because who's your inline blocker? Is Texas going to have to go back to the 6-man offensive line? Probably. You don't have anybody there, at least that we've seen proven, that can go in and be that inline extra blocker off the edge. Put your hand in the dirt and go hit an edge rusher. You haven't seen that.
Yeah. The only one that would be the guy is Spencer Shannon and or Jordan Washington. Washington, let's see how he develops this spring. All right, offensive line, Kyle Flood has not taken a single transfer offensive lineman at the University of Texas. I think that they feel good about the young guys in the program. I'm putting down a 0. Gerry, what do you got?
Yeah, until Flood takes one, I'm going with 0. It just does. That's not really the plan. Trevor Gooseby showed enough to have confidence at left tackle at him. Texas really likes Brandon Baker coming up at right tackle. The only way that I could see Texas being pushed there is what if a couple of the backup tackles hit the portal? And that may push Flood a little bit. But if his guys stay, I just don't see it. I mean, they really like Nate Kibble at guard coming up that's redshirting. Nete will probably finally get his chance this next season that he's been waiting on. Center position's loaded at Texas right now. I just don't think that's where Sark and Flood want to go unless enough guys transferred out of the tackle position where it put them in a bind.
Jaden Chapman could be key to that too, because he's going to be a guy that gets a look at both tackle and guard. What do you think, CJ? 0 or 1 or a big question mark right now?
I'm the same way. We haven't seen offensive line be a big spot of need for Texas in the portal. We haven't seen really much interest from Texas to any offensive lineman in the portal, and for good reason. There's a lot of bodies in that big humans room for Kyle Flood. And to your point, Gerry, they haven't seen much departure or attrition. So if this is the year where attrition finally hits Texas, maybe towards the back end or maybe in the spring, do you see them go out there and add maybe a grad transfer or one-year guy to bridge the gap? But right now in this early session, I don't expect much activity at offensive line.
I think that's a good way to put it, because what happens if there's an injury, that sort of stuff, and you guys are talking about that. I think that's a good way to put it, CJ. All right, hey, this episode of On Texas Football brought to you by DG Construction. Texas fans in the Austin and San Antonio area, if you're dreaming of transforming your outdoor spaces, look no further than DG Construction, San Antonio's premier hardscape and exterior living space contractor, celebrating 10 amazing years of delivering top-notch craftsmanship. The guys at DG Construction are experts at creating stunning driveways, patios, walkways, and beautiful lawn improvements in either concrete or vivid pavers that match and enhance the curb appeal of your home's exterior. Whether you're in San Antonio, Austin, Kerrville, or anywhere in the Hill Country, their dedicated team brings your residential and commercial visions to life, from luxurious artificial turf to sturdy house slabs and even foundation repairs. DG Construction has you covered. They're just a call away. Reach out to Mark Valdez, their dedicated design consultant, at 210-400-5643. That's 210-400-5643. Don't wait to make your outdoor dreams a reality. Give DG Construction a call today or visit them online. DG SATX, that's DGSATX.com. Hook them from the folks at DG Construction. All right, hey, guys, let's switch over to the defense and talk also the specialist next. Defensive end, I'm at a 0. Even with the loss, most likely, of definitely Baron Sorrell, but most likely does a Justice Finkley go in the portal here now? They've got some young guys coming in. I just don't see them going to the portal at defensive end at this point. Do either of you guys?
I could if Trey Moore goes pro, because that would be, you might want to bridge the gap there if there's another Trey Moore level guy in the portal. That could be a possibility for me, because you don't look. Colin Simmons will play more snaps next year, obviously, and be an all SEC level player, maybe all American level player. But how inexperienced do you want to be behind him is the question in a long season like Texas wants to play. I think on the strong side, look, I think with Baron Sorrell going, you have Ethan Burke back. You should have Colton Vosick back, but he's got to stay healthy. I mean, another year where he's missed some time. You have Zena coming off red shirt. You have Lance Jackson there. I think that spot is secure. Again, the opposite end, Smith-Orogbo's coming off a knee injury. He won't be there for spring practice, so they're not really going to know what they have with him. So it wouldn't shock me if Trey Moore goes pro. That's actually one of the big decisions coming up for Texas and this team next year. What does Trey Moore do? Because that will impact, I think, the way Texas looks at the edge spot in the portal.
Good identifying that. What about you, CJ? 0, 1, what are you thinking?
I think 1's probably the spot to be at. Again, it'd probably be off that weak side. And I'm kind of the mindset that I think you do see Trey Moore come back. I think that coming off of the UTSA, hype, you had 22 sacks in 2 years. And, you didn't get your first sack until week 12. So I know that doesn't mean everything. But when you're an undersized guy, it's got to be production that you lean on. That'll be as big a win as any portal addition, I think, for Texas. If he's able to come back and spend another year with this system, with Colin Simmons, with a now Lance Jackson and Smith-Orogbo and Zena, I mean, this room is very talented. But with him coming back potentially, I think that thwarts what could be any type of quest for another portal addition there.
Defensive tackle. Woo!
3.
There's 4 that will graduate. 2 others that might move on. One of them is already declared. That's Gerry Bledsoe. They've only got 3 high schoolers coming in to combine with Sadir Mitchell, Aaron Bryant, and Alex January and Melvin Hills. You think 3 is 3 the minimum? They took 3 this last year.
Yes, I think it's the minimum, because here's the reality for Justice Terry. 5-star prospect, huge ceiling. But he's not a 3-tech or a 0 as a freshman. He's more of a 5 that's going to grow into a 5/3. So I think Texas, Sadir Mitchell's a big key there. What are their thoughts on Sadir? He played a little bit yesterday again, but I think 3 is the minimum. And I think it's all zero shade 3 tech level players with a lot of experience. I think that's what Texas is looking for. And I think they would like to get a true difference maker amongst those portal guys, and then maybe a couple of really strong rotational players. I don't think they're going out there thinking they need 2 guys who are first-day draft picks out of the portal, because I'm not sure that's realistic. But I think 3 is the minimum number, and one of them kind of needs to be a big-time player. I don't think they'll get 2 big-time players. I think they get 1 big-time player and 2 really good role players.
Well, I'll tell you what, you see the game yesterday. There's no doubt they need help up front next year. CJ, what are you thinking as far as numbers concerned?
2 minimum for me. I would prefer 3, but again, you took 3 last year, 2 play, one's on red shirt. So that obviously meant that you were relying on what was already in the cabinet, and Texas won't have that luxury next year, right? So you're losing essentially your top 4 pieces on the interior. And I think that's where you want to be, is having 4 guys that have played a lot of experience in football, can rely on that interior defensive line. Who's going to be in the 4? How many of that 4 do you have right now? I don't know if you have any, right? Just a lot of uncertainty, a lot of youth. So 2 for the minimum. What's the development look like for Sadir Mitchell, Aaron Bryant? Some of these guys that Texas is relying on. Does Alex January make that jump in the spring? I think you take 2 in the winter, and then you see what's around in the spring one more time in case you desperately need another piece.
I'm going to go 3, guys. I think of all the positions that Texas has to address in the portal, this is the one. They can't afford to miss here. They miss here, it's ugly because they do not have the numbers. I think Sadir has come on. I think Alex January is going to be a really, really good player for Texas. But, man, watching what we saw yesterday, it emphasizes or re-emphasizes the need to be good up front in this league. And, frankly, they missed too often the previous 3 years at recruiting the defensive tackle room, and now we're running out of all of those guys. So we'll see how that comes around, but I think they got to get 3 if they want to be an elite team again next year. Without that, I don't think they're an elite team, because all it'll take, CJ, you mentioned that 4 rotation, 1 injury.
Yeah.
1 injury, and you're already back down to a level that you just can't be at, or you're going to get pushed around in the trenches. All right, linebacker, guys. CJ, how many linebackers do you think Texas takes?
This is an interesting one.
This is an interesting one. I think 1 for sure. You got to have some sort of depth there. Look, you have Anthony Hill, you have Leon Galafau. You're going to have Ty Anthony Smith taking into a larger role, but one guy goes down, relying on the freshman Elijah Barnes. You're going to see Mo Blackwell move on. You're going to see David Binda move on. And it's not necessarily just a true Mike guy, right? With a guy like Mo Blackwell, a guy who can play with teams playing in the 12 personnel, or when they go heavy set, you can throw him in there and kind of have, a hybrid safety, hybrid linebacker kind of situation. That's kind of where I'm looking. A guy that can play the middle, but isn't necessarily dead set on being in the middle of the defense right there. But I think Texas has to add 1, especially with some of the departures from the spring this year. I thought they maybe would have looked at adding 1 at the time. Obviously, they liked what they have, and it's been a good unit for the team this year. But I think going forward, you have to at least bolster that room just a little bit more with some experience and a veteran presence.
What about you, Gerry?
Maybe a bigger guy too, on some level.
Like a guy that can fill in the run lanes in the SEC?
Maybe a bigger guy. Now, I think Elijah Bo Barnes will come in, play a role for this team. Jonathan Cunningham gives you depth. I think Texas needs Ty Anthony Smith, different conversation, to be a guy next year. But I still wonder about size-wise. If they look for somebody in that 6'3", 240 range that can play a role on this team, I think they're going to be fine in terms of speed, perimeter playmaking. But, can you, especially with a younger defensive front in front of those guys next year, is there a need for more size? But they got to be able to play. It's got to be somebody with size that can actually play at the SEC level if they find that guy.
I think it's an interesting discussion because the Longhorns bring in just 2 linebackers, Bo Barnes, as well as Jonathan Cunningham, and they only took 1 last year in Ty Anthony Smith.
Yeah.
And Where's Darian Gillette in this conversation? He hasn't played much at all this year. Tassili Akana has not played much at all this year. We'll see what happens in the portal in that regard soon. But Texas, otherwise, I think I would say one most likely, but I do wonder what's going to happen with some existing players on the team and what that might look like. All right, defensive backs. Let's separate safety and corner, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
The top two safeties, Makuba and Taft, most likely gone. Taft is still debating, even though he walked with the seniors. Then you have Jahdae Barron. It's his last game or his last run here with the Longhorns. Gavin Holmes expected to be gone as well. Kobe Black, we've seen play some guys, so he's gotten some reps. Jelani McDonald will be back at safety. Derek Williams hopefully is back from his injury as well. Does Texas need a corner and a safety in this back end? Because right now, if they don't go to the portal, they're looking at a somewhat inexperienced defensive backfield to start next season, in my opinion. Gerry, I'll let you start.
Yeah, I think corner will be interesting. It really depends on what they've seen from Santana Wilson and Javion Cole this year. I've heard good things about Santana Wilson in his redshirt year, but he's still going to be a redshirt freshman, right? And then you bring in the good thing for Texas is Cade Phillips, Caleb Chester, early enrollees. Jonah Williams, Zella Six, early enrollees. Grayson Littleton's not, but he's a nickel. And also, the other thing that factors in is Wardell Mack a nickel, or he can be a corner or nickel. What are the thoughts on Warren Roberson? They actually have numbers there. They may just be inexperienced. So that would lead you to believe if there's a really good player in the portal that they will probably take that guy, but it's not a given. Safety, if Derek Williams didn't ACL, I would say no. But he's out for the spring, and he may not be ready for the start of the season because he suffered an in-season knee injury, an ACL injury. So what are the odds he's actually ready to go in August and is the same player moving around on a football field that he was prior? I like the young safeties. Jonah Williams not taking part in spring practice. So how much does that set him back? I think they will take, if Taft is gone, I think they will take a safety in the portal. I don't think there's any doubt. Question is, are they going to take a corner?
So one or two, depending on corner?
Yeah.
All right, CJ, what about you?
Yeah, safety for sure. You know, that has to be a guy with experience. It has to be a guy that leads. If Makuba and Taft apart, you're going to need a guy that's vocal in the backside and getting guys where they need to be. That's the biggest strength for this Texas defense right now is the communication in the secondary. You're going to have some guy with experience there. And Jelani McDonald's played this year, right? Derek Williams has played throughout his career. But to your point, Gerry, what's he going to be like whenever he comes back? Will he come back ready for season? And if it's only Jelani McDonald back there, are you going to rely on Xavier Folsami? Or are you going to rely on a Jordan Johnson-Rubella? That's a lot of inexperience there, even with Jonah Williams and Zayla Hicks, 2 5-star caliber guys stepping foot into the room. Inexperience will kill a team, especially early on when you go to Ohio State to open the year, when they want to sling the ball on the road. But cornerback, I think, is interesting. And I at first I was leaning yes to adding one, simply for the fact, again, you don't have a lot of guys with snaps, right? You're likely going to have Manny Muhammad locked down one side. I'm thinking Kobe Black's going to be pinned into that spot opposite of him. When you start rotating, or if one of those guys goes down, look, is Warren Roberson going to be the guy for you? Is it going to be Javion Cole, or are you going to rely on a true freshman? It's pretty inexperienced there when it comes to true snaps at cornerback. So I was kind of on the fence about corner. I think one is a minimum for the secondary spot, but I could see one at either position as well.
I think they've got to take 2 in the secondary, guys. I'll be blunt. I mean, you can't leave. That's a lot of youth, to your point, CJ. A lot of youth back there. I think that they're departing with a secondary right now that's one of the best in the country at communicating, especially if Taft is gone. I think they got to go 2.
You know what'll be interesting? If they don't take a corner, that means they love the people we haven't seen play yet.
Yeah.
That is true. That's true. Hey, thought process now. This is going to be funny. Kicker, punter, specialist.
Hey,
I would have said it was just a punter 3 days ago. Now I think Sark's going to be looking for a kicker too, guys. Y'all agree with that?
Has there ever been rotating kickers where somebody kicks from the right hash and the other guy kicks from the left? Maybe you go find the guy that was 9-9 for the right hash in 2024 or something. Look, I think it's an interesting decision because it's pretty obvious Bert Auburn wants to come back. He didn't walk, but I mean, Texas should have won the SEC championship yesterday.
Yeah,
and the right hash kicks are not finding the uprights, and that's an issue, CJ.
It is. And, it's been an issue this season, right? You've missed the easy kicks. You've missed the hard kicks, but those are the kicks that you're expecting to make, especially in these big situations. Kicker for me, I want to know what the staff or how the staff feels about Spencer Barnett, the kid out of Westlake who's on roster right now. Of course, he made the highlight reels out of Westlake when he was drilling 60-yard field goals. He's got leg strength. Now, is he consistent enough when the lights are bright? That's something no one knows, in my opinion. So if that's a question mark, then yeah, I think you have to go at least. You have to have a spot at both. And
interesting. So definitely a punter. We're all in agreement. Yes, on punter.
Yeah,
we agree. Yeah, I agree with you. All right, no kick returner unless it's part of the running back or wide receiver or DB category.
I used to think yes, go find a return man, but there's so few return nowadays. It's like few and far between unless you make bad decisions.
Wow, that was a subtle dig at the kickoff early yesterday. All right, guys, let's review real quick. I want to do that. 0 quarterbacks, 0 to 1 running backs, 1 to 2 wide receivers, 0 most likely offensive linemen unless something happens late. Then going over to defense, 0 to 1 tight ends also as well there. Defensive end, 0 to 1. Defensive tackle, I think we were almost a consensus at 3. CJ said 2 to 3. Linebacker, 1. Cornerback, 0 to 1. Safety, at least 1. And then kicker, 1, 0 to 1, or punter, 1. Look, I could eat that. You add all those up, you're looking at a portal class between 8 to 10.
I think that's
likely for the Longhorns, and it will be defense heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like 3 to 4 on offense, 5 to 6, maybe even 7 on defense. So not surprising, given that Texas is not going to go heavy portal at the offensive line on that side of the ball, and probably just look to do it piecemeal at wide receiver. All right, let's see. And they may not do it piecemeal, by the way. They may go big game hunting at wide receiver. So there's I'm not saying piecemeal like not a great player. Just wait and see what comes available. All right. Thanks again to DG Construction for their sponsorship of this show. Reach out to them. Again, that number is 210-400-5643. That's 210-400-5643. Anywhere in Central Texas. That's DGSATX.com. DGSATX.com. All right. Thanks, CJ. Thank you, Gerry, for this time. The portal opens tomorrow. We will hear names across the country go into the portal, and probably some Longhorns headed to the portal as well. Gerry, CJ, you all have any parting thoughts?
I do. Talk to a college coach this morning, and his thought was, and by the way, one of the Texas coaches, his thought was by Wednesday or Thursday, all the first wave big names will be in. If not, that next wave of names that are going to come in are guys playing in the playoffs.
CJ, you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, right? Texas took upwards of 10 guys last year. Will they do it again? I think it all depends on how many portal guys you see enter from the roster right now, which I'm thinking could get upwards of about 12, maybe 13.
Yeah,
I think there's going to be a pretty good amount of names, and that just goes to the level of depth, trying to get on the field. And Texas, when you stack first, second, third ranked recruiting class back to back to back, you're going to see good players go.
CJ, that's a great point. I could see the portal numbers leaving being a little higher than we think, because the reality is if you aren't on the field now and you just saw Texas sign the number 1 class of the country and there's guys at your position, I mean, it's hard to find your spot right now in the minds of some. I think that's a great point, CJ.
All right, that's going to do it. Thanks again to DG Construction. Thanks to CJ Vogel and Gerry Hamilton, as well as our producer, Matt Hutchison. For the guys, I'm Bobby Burton. Portal opens tomorrow. Longhorns playing Clemson. We got a lot of coverage coming for you guys. Hook 'em.